the scrapped watchman. In the first phase, there are a total of 9 distinctive movesets the boss can perform, starting off with swing attack. You know a swing attack's gonna happen when the boss lifts its arm up into the air, and what makes this very distinctive is the fact the hand is exposed. It's visible. If you're in front of the boss, it's gonna be visible. That's a clear indication that this is gonna be a swing attack. Now, the attacks themselves are very short in terms of reach. They don't have a really large amount of distance that they cover. But they are fast, and it can be comboed up to 5 times. With that in mind, just be wary. Next, we have arm twirl. Self-explanatory. During the wind-up, the arm starts to twirl out and about just before it slams to the ground right in front of the boss. And like swing attack, the boss will gradually try to close the distance while doing so. So you see him like walking while attacking, or winding up in this case. Just be wary, attacks can come from both directions. And backhanded, the boss will take his left arm and move it all the way across to its right. Really distinguishable, very easy to indicate. And once his left arm is to the right, he goes for the attack. Now, after the attack, the boss will always dash back, creating distance between the player and the boss. Keep in mind, expect to follow up. Jump. What makes this different from backhanded is the fact that there's no attack before the jump. There's no attack to initiate the jump, and instead, he just jumps. Now, he can use this ability. The boss can perform this ability to either make or close distance. However, if the jump was to close distance, jump towards the player will take damage if he's within the landing zone. So yeah. Next we have ball. Jumps into the air, forming into a ball that spins and heads towards the player. I don't know how the physics works in this one, kind of hurts with my head, but maybe it's an arching position? I don't know. Impale. Basically holds up his right arm up into the air, and then if you look very closely, you can see the hand starts to spin, making it really easy to indicate that this is going to be an impale. Hand begins to spin, arm on the right hand side is up, and then he lunges forwards. When he lunges forwards, it covers a big space of distance. So I guess you can consider this like a gap closing ability. Keep in mind, when he's impaling and he misses or you block it, it also gives a chance for the player to do damage. Thought I mentioned that. Long left. Holds up his left arm for a very long time, God knows for how long, and then he swings. Now, like impale, this attack covers a big swathe of distance. For our first Fury attack, we have Fury Spin. I'm really good at naming this, as you can tell. Basically, the boss lifts both his arms up in the air and spins them as fast as he can, and then slams the ground right in front of him. While doing so, the boss will walk towards the player. We'll try to cover some distance before attacking. So keep that in mind. And if you look very closely, he attacks when both his arms are aligned after the swing. That's how you know it's going to come down. For our very last Fury and our very last attack for this phase, we have Fury Repositioning. Basically, he leaps into the air in all fours, and wherever the player is, he tries to orient himself towards the player. Let's say you're behind him, smacking him, and then he leaps in the air. I don't know how, but he turns around, faces the player directly, and then lands. Keep in mind, it's a fury attack. You will take damage if you're within that area. Alright, let's talk about openings. So, starting to fight. Running at the boss. Starts off with swing. Into twirl. Right, there's an opening you can go for. Backhanded into impale. Right, there's an opening. Twirl. Right here is an opening. And right here, you can actually do a charge heavy. Opening. Swing to twirl. And right here is another opening you can go for. Backhand to impale. Opening right here. Swing to twirl. Opening right there, to backhanded, and to long left. Right here is an opening. Swing again. The fury spin. Opening right here. You can go for a charge heavy. Backhanded, into long left. You can go for a charge heavy right here. Swing. Into arm twirl, opening again. Arm twirl, opening. Opening. Charge heavy again. Alright, let's talk about the second phase. In the second phase, there are a total of 14 attacks. 9 of which are from the previous phase, and I'd say like the majority of the attacks from the previous phase got somewhat of an upgrade or like a new passive, which is pretty neat. So again, in this phase there are 14 attacks, 9 of which comes from the previous phase, and in this phase we are introduced to 5 new attacks. Now, starting off with Transformed Roar. Now, you know a transformed roar is going to happen when the boss briefly looks down just before he attacks. Just before he roars. Now, the roar itself does not damage the player, but instead it's like the sphere that's emanating around him that damages the player. Now, this sphere is a medium reaching sphere that damages the player but also applies shock. Just be wary and keep in mind that even though this is a transform attack at the beginning of the phase, he can use this throughout the whole duration. The whole duration of the rest of the boss fight. You can use it mid combos, after combos, even the start, I don't know, you name it. But expect it. Next we have Slammed Lightning. After the boss slams the ground, either with arm twirl or fury spins, it would leave like a small area in the ground that emanates light, that emits light. Now, after a short duration, this area will explode, will detonate, and if you are within the area, you will take damage and you'll get shocked applied to you. Next, we have Grab. I mean, self-explanatory. Basically grabs you, but the wind up here is very similar to Impale. Both start on the right hand side. Both have the distinctive hand twirl, but what makes it different here is knowing what position you are in. Oftentimes the boss, if you're at faraway distance, the boss will go for Impale to close the distance. If you're really close to the boss might go for a grab. And I can't stress that enough, but just know what position you are in. Watching the hand is really key. You can try to watch the arm's angle because they're both different. For impale, it's like behind his back, and grab is somewhat like up in the air. You can watch that too, but just keep in mind, be wary. They are similar. Next, we have sweeping attacks. Unlike the other attacks, or unlike a few attacks in this phase, where the boss walked towards you while attacking, or winding up, in this case, the boss is going to close the distance beforehand, before initiating the attack. Now, the attacks are somewhat of a cone shape, medium distance, but then again, he's trying to close that gap. So any mistimed dashes are really heavily punished here. Next, we have Fury Backhanded. Very similar to Backhanded, except but this time there's no lunge back. It's just a backhanded attack. The timing is almost virtually the same. Very iconic moveset. Just takes his left arm and moves it all the way towards the right and then swings. The next two attacks that we'll be going into are, well, they're from the previous phase, but these two attacks specifically got somewhat of an upgrade. They got a lot of stuff going on. It may look sporadic, but let me go into detail about it. So, starting off with ball. Jumps into the air, lands, and it may look confusing. There's a lot of lightning strikes happening. It may look sporadic, but in fact, it really isn't. Alright, so he jumps in the air and then lands. Within the first wave of lightning strikes happens around the boss in a very short distance. The second wave of lightning strikes actually happens in intervals, so equal spacing, in a ring around the boss. Now this ring is around mid to long range in terms of distance, so dashing further away can avoid it, or dashing towards the boss can avoid it. The last attack we're going to talk about is Fury Repositioning, but the upgraded version. He jumps into the air and then lands. Once he lands, he now creates a ring around them, around the boss. And just like slammed lightning, after a short duration, given a small amount of time, this area will explode. But since it's a timed attack, you can quickly try to make or close distance. Alright, let's talk about strategies. By now, where you are in the game, you should have these two things stored up in your inventory. If you're starting from the beginning of the game up to this point, up to this second boss, you should have a decent amount of these stored in your inventory. These are called ampules. The one on the left is called the Ampule of Resistance, and increases your resistance to status effects. And in this case, the status effect that we're going up against is shock. And next is the Ampule of Purification. This just removes all the status effect that was applied to the player. Now, the status effect that we're going up against is called shock. Now, what shock does is basically reduce stamina regen, and you'll notice when that hits, especially if it's a slow weapon that I'm using right now, and you'll notice it. I notice it. It's pretty devastating. So just having these prepared, well, they really should be prepared, but just knowing these are in your inventories and you can use this for this boss fight is pretty nice. Alright, let's talk about openings. Starting off with Transformed Roar. Once the sphere dissipates, you can go in and do some damage. Although the window of opportunity is kind of small, but damage is damage. Ain't complaining about that. Next we have grab. Once the boss misses, the recovery time on the boss's behalf is quite long, and actually you can actually get some really good damage off here. A charge heavy, add some lights even, you name it. Next we have arm swing. For arm swing, after he does left, right, or right, left, the window of opportunity is quite small, but do what you gotta do here. Next we have Fury backhanded. Now Fury backhanded, like the majority of Fury attacks in this phase, the recovery time is really long. So charge heavy, add some more on top of that, you name it. Next we have ball. Although this is from the first phase, not much is really different here. Opening's still the same. Once you deflect it, actually, if you're really close to the boss and happen to dodge it, but if you deflect it, you can actually get some charge heavy and charge attacks in, which is not bad. And very lastly is Fury repositioning. Although from the first phase, it got its upgraded, but same thing here. Keep your positioning in mind. Just be wary the first wave of lightning strikes happen around the boss, very short distance. So after that finishes, you can go in and do some damage. But if you're playing it safe, don't really want to risk it, just keep your distance and wait for the next attack. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you. If you think this was a very informative video, I sure hope it helps. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe. Yeah. I think that's pretty much it. Alright, see ya.